So far this year, we've raised about $50,000. Since our dawn, we've raised close to $150,000. We're probably going to break that mark within the next month or two. If you go look at the GoFundMe comments, they're slap full of taxation staff, destroy the welfare state. All this is pretty fun.
From Acapulco, Mexico, this is Anarchast.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. I've got a great first-time guest coming in from Motown, Detroit City. It's Logan Davies of Voluntary Ism In Action, and they contacted me actually a couple weeks ago and said they wanted to be on the show, and I looked into them, and essentially what they are is a bunch of voluntarists who decided to show people that we can have charity and stuff like that without government, which I've said for a long time, and that's actually one of the biggest, there's numerous. The roads is always number one, which is so strange. I don't know why roads is like how could we have roads? It's like we have roads and they don't disappear. And even if you don't need government to have roads. But right soon down the list, when you talk to your normal brainwashed statist slave, they when you say, well, we don't really need government, one of the top ones is, well, what would happen to poor people or people who have problems? And, well, I think people would help them out, especially if they weren't losing half their money every year stolen from them by the government. There's a lot of good people out there. And you can actually see that with charities. Whenever there's some sort of major event, there's always tons of people giving money to it. A lot of that money actually usually gets kind of wasted because a lot of these big charities, things like Red Cross and other big ones, especially if the Clintons are involved, it mostly goes to the Clintons. But smaller charities and all that are great. But the point of it is that in general, people want to help other people if they can. And so we're going to talk to Logan about that because they've been doing this for a while. He came on about a year ago, and they've been raising a lot of money for a number of things. We're going to find out what they've been doing. So pleasure to have you on, Logan. And the first question I have to ask you, though, is, how did you become an anarchist?
Thanks for having me. I do a lot of reading. Back in the day, I was your average statist. Didn't really critically think into particular things. And then over time became an anarchist and started reading some Rothbard, some other anarchist literature. Came to the conclusion that I'm not really removing the tumor, just kind of like cutting a little piece of it off, it's just going to grow back. And then the biggest thing with me, I guess, is non-aggression, and there is aggression no matter what, even in the anarchist state. So if I was going to be logically consistent, it led me to anarchism.
That's great. And so how did you end up getting involved with Voluntarism in Action?
It started when I used to just rant and rave on Facebook, and then the guys from a Facebook page called Being Libertarian noticed me, and they asked me to come on board as a writer. So I started writing for them, writing some articles. And then they had a project going. It was the Voluntary Ism In Action. It was just in its little infant stages and stuff. They did accomplish a lot. They probably raised about $50,000, $60,000 in about a year. And then I wanted to get my toes wet in volunteering at some charity work, to put my money where my mouth was. Used to always tell folks, like, well, we don't need government. We can abolish this welfare state. We can do it our own. And unless you're putting that into action, people won't believe you. So I asked them to let me help them out with that. So the manager of that at the time brought me on board for a particular campaign. A lady had ALS, and we managed to raise about $7,000, $8,000 so she could make some home alterations. And I kind of spearheaded that one on my own, that campaign. And after that, the guy just asked me to take over. And then I saw the potential in it, and I decided to really legitimize it and try to expand this bad boy to see where we can take it.
That's great. And so give us some history on how it's been going. You've been doing it for about a year. What kind of things have you been doing? What kind of funds have you been raising and affecting other people?
So far this year, we've raised about $50,000. Since our dawn, we've raised close to $150,000. We're probably going to break that mark within the next month or two. We're expecting to. We try to tackle just about anything from education, people with medical bills, food drives, just about anything you could think of. We try to get our toes wet in it. I think the first one this year was a girl named Kyaria. She is from a small town, Mississippi, humble beginnings, a very poor town. She's like the only person in her town to make it out and go to a major college. She got accepted into a medical university. She ran into some bureaucracy in the financial aid office with her Pell Grants and her government grants and whatnot. And then her teacher reached out to us and see if we could give her a hand. We managed to raise $9,000 for her, and we paid for her tuition, kept her in school. So now she is attending medical school, and she reaches back out to us occasionally, shows us her grades, makes sure she's doing good. I'd say the biggest, the most focused we have is on medical campaigns. Everybody has medical issues. The medical system sucks. Of course, one by the state would be even worse, but it could use some improvement. So we've raised, I'd say probably $15,000 to $20,000 this year on medical expenses. Our most recent one of a fellow libertarian named Justin, his wife diagnosed with breast cancer, mother of 3. She's like 27. They managed to pay for most of the medical bills, but they started falling short on rent, all the other bills around the house. So we raised, I think, $7,000 of them, helped them out with that. We do a lot of our stuff we do digitally because our team, we focus heavily on social media. But lately, since we're trying to become more legitimate, just to grow and stuff, we started doing all the groundwork. So we just finished off a food drive, which we're going to start designating funds to individuals in need for this upcoming holiday season. We raised about $3,500 in just about 2 weeks.
That's great, especially considering in the U.S., a lot of places, it's actually illegal to feed people who, like homeless people. It's unbelievable.
It's kind of weird for us because although we are legitimate, we're doing the whole federal tax, 501c3, and we are still teeter-totting in gray areas just to because we don't want to break none of our principles, but we also don't want to get shut down. So we'll probably feed them. I'm sure we'll get a couple citations and whatnot throughout the time. But,
yeah, and I guess this 501c or whatever it is, that also can help you to, because a lot of people who are being extorted, taxed in the U.S., they get like a benefit or a write-off if they donate, right? So I totally understand. Like as anarchists, like we sometimes have to deal with the system to some respect. Nothing, you're not doing anything wrong by doing that, and it can actually. And I think you just got that as well, right?
What was that? Yeah, we just received that in July.
Great. And so, like, this is very interesting. So, how are you getting all these donations? Like, is it mostly through your Facebook page? And how are people even on your page? Like, I just don't know how you've managed to do this so far.
Mainly through social media, like you said, mainly Facebook. We also go on Instagram and Twitter. Facebook's probably the biggest medium. Before we started trying to do our own campaigns to have focus, what we would do is we created a community group. We just had a bunch of other anarchists and volunteers join it, and they would just scour the internet looking for people who need help or people they know that needed help. And then they would just introduce the campaigns to us. The team would discuss it, whichever one was the most admirable and feasible. We would push it until it got completed. So, yeah, that's probably mainly how we do it. Social media.
And how many people do you have on, like, your Facebook page, for example?
That just follows us?
Yeah.
I think it's about to hit 20,000, but we do team up with other pages, like Being Libertarian. They have like 900,000 followers, so we got some deals cut with them where they share some of our campaigns.
Cool. Would you say that most of the people who kind of follow you or who donate are voluntarians?
Oh, yeah, for sure. If you go look at the GoFundMe comments, they're slap full of taxation staff, destroy the welfare state, all this. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, that is great. Very interesting. I wasn't aware of you guys. I'm glad I am now. We're definitely going to make sure we have your links to everything down below. Anyone out there who, if you've got some extra money, if you're not like, hungry or starving, or you got some extra money and you want to kind of like help out. And a lot of these things are like things where you can just donate like $5 or $10 type things, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So for, your average person out there, it feels good to help people out. And, I just think it's really great, and that's one of the things. Like I said, like the status, like they're like, well, without the government. Well, first of all, you're in the U.S. there, right? You have this giant government, and there's actually people who need help with food, and the government's not helping them, right?
Yeah, they're blocking us from doing it. You got to think what?
And actually blocking you from doing it.
Yeah, during the Great Depression, wasn't FDR? I think he was destroying crops, just mess with the prices and stuff. Yeah,
it's pretty unbelievable when you think about it, like how most people are so sort of wrong on this topic. First of all, they think the state's helping people. In some respects, maybe it kind of is, but in most respects, it really isn't. And then, like you said, when other people, and this has happened too with like potholes. When people, I've seen this numerous times in the U.S. There's people at potholes. They have them for like 10 years. They keep writing their city council or whatever. They never fill it in. When they go to fill it in, the cops come and tell them to stop or charge them or fine them because that's the government's job is supposed to do it, but they don't actually do it. It's crazy. I don't know if you've ever been to Michigan or Detroit, but I think we probably have the worst roads in the country.
So no one can use an argument against me. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so that's great. I hope a lot of people share this, especially when you hear that comment, right? So when you're wherever you are on some social media and you're getting into conversation and people say, well, who's going to help people when they're in need? Send them this video and send them to the Voluntary Ism In Action page. And hopefully we can kind of wake them up. Is there anything else you would want to say about trying to wake people up to this?
Other than spreading the word, I mean, it's very important. I think the biggest problem with a lot of us anarchists and libertarians is that we have principles. They're set in stone, but a lot of us just don't put them into action, And you're not going to convince people unless we actually get this stuff done. Unless you have to show them evidence and proof that we can do this. Like, that's why people, when I get into debates and stuff, they really can't tell me nothing when it comes to helping the poor and stuff, because I assume that all these voluntarists and anarchists have done, all the ones that follow us have done way more to help all of them than the state ever could. You got to think.
Yeah.
People, I think in 2016, set record highs for donations, like $400 billion, and that's pretty close. I think they spent just over $1.2 trillion on Medicare and other welfare state things. Just imagine if taxes were cut. I expect that number to be exponentially higher.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing that you can't say, right, because we don't have it today. But I know just from looking at how the world is that if people had more money because they wouldn't be taxed from the government and they could actually use the money for what they wanted to use, I know that so many people would help people who were in need. And we've seen that. And you just pointed out hundreds of billions of dollars go into charities and things like that. And if people really, if they weren't being extorted for like half the money they make every year, you could just imagine. And one thing I've always liked about charity, and this is a comment that maybe you would understand, I'm sure you'd probably understand, but one that I've thought about quite a bit is, when the state takes your money, like say it takes my money, and it goes and takes and ruins most of it and gives it to bureaucrats, and then about 10% of it ends up to some welfare guy. I used to work at a bank, and on welfare day, all the welfare people would come in to cash their welfare check. This is back in the 90s, before EBT cards and all that kind of stuff. And these people were so angry, and they're like, "This $300, that's not very much." But if I was just sitting there and there was a guy who lived on my street and he was actually homeless or whatever, and I went up and I said, "Hey, do you even have anything to eat?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, "Man, here's $300. That guy would probably become my best friend. I'd feel awesome because I'd see him doing better, or maybe not, but at least I'd give my shot. He'd be like, "Wow, that Jeff guy's awesome. Like, I love that guy. He gave me $300. So we'd both feel awesome. But when the state gets involved, I feel crappy. I'm getting just robbed. I don't know what's happening with it, and most of it's just getting wasted anyway. The people receiving it, for the most part, kind of feel kind of like it's not very much from the government, right? So when the state gets involved, a really beautiful thing that could have happened ends up not happening, and in fact, the opposite happens.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think there's a big stern difference, and I think it's probably like a psychological factor. I feel like people they would accept gifts a lot more wholeheartedly if it's an actual voluntary gift, compared to someone who's just expecting something like that sense of entitlement that the government kind of indoctrinates a lot of people to adopt, and that's probably what drives that.
Yeah, like, for example, that example that you gave of this girl who wanted to go to medical school and a bunch of people donated. I'm pretty sure, like I'll bet, that she really appreciates getting that money. And you pointed out, you kind of like, she sends in her grades and all that kind of stuff. And I bet she's like, I better pass because like these people gave me this money, right? Whereas if it came from the government, if it was a government grant or something, she wouldn't probably feel that way or nowhere near the same.
People are wasteful, especially when the money's not yours. So, yeah.
But when you know there's a connection, when it's an actual human connection, it totally changes the dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. Makes you feel like you need to make them proud or something,
Or whatever it is, right? But like it's basically what I see with the state is it always takes the humanity away from everything.
Oh, yes, definitely.
And then they put out the propaganda that we're all bad, we're destroying the world. That's the climate change thing. Without us, this constant propaganda on the television programming, which is all from the government. That every show's a cop show, right? And everyone's like, whoa, without the police, whoa, we'd be in big trouble. It's like, no, I think we'd be fine.
Definitely.
Yeah. And the police are now the biggest criminals, the biggest robbers in the U.S. with asset forfeiture laws. They actually steal more than regular thieves combined, just the police alone. So, do you see any kind of hope? You're kind of a younger – how old are you, by the way?
27.
Yeah, you're kind of younger compared to me for sure. And it's always interesting for me to get a different perspective from people, especially younger or older, on your – how do you think voluntarism and anarchism is kind of going? Do you see it's kind of catching on a little bit? Are people starting to wake up? Do you have some hope? I
do have some hope. Of course, it's beat down because I am surrounded by a bunch of entitled millennials. I'm not trying to throw like a label out there, but a lot of them are leaning towards the democratic, socialist, communist crap. So it's like I do see hope, especially with what we're doing, because before I started doing this, I didn't have much hope. I was a nihilist, 100%. But then when I started doing this, I see all these complete strangers, thousands of them, just throwing money at people who need help, and they ain't asking for nothing in return. And I think when we accomplish these things, the people who donate it see it, and they're like, oh, wow, maybe we kind of don't need the government to rob Peter to pay Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've actually seen that myself numerous times just in the last few weeks. I don't know if I want to name names because, they're kind of in difficult situations. I don't want to embarrass them or anything like that. But a few anarchists, a lot of us anarchists are pretty connected through social media. We kind of know a lot of other anarchists. And I've saw two people in the last few weeks who had, one, she was in a car accident. She didn't have money to pay. She lost her job because she couldn't work for a few days or whatever. And I saw and heard that a lot of people just started sending her some money. And there was another person as well. She was going through a sort of like the husband or the ex-husband had taken the kids using government laws, and she was having a bad time, and she didn't have any money, and she had to go, and she needed a hotel room to go to court and all this kind of stuff. And I know that a lot of people just kind of sent her some money. And so this happens all the time, especially I wonder if it's almost like the anarchists are even more giving than regular people. I'm not sure about that, but it kind of almost seems that way.
Kind of like how some people like, not some people say, you can observe that the Satanists are kind of more polite and less judgy than the stern.
Yeah, everything seems kind of upside down for the most part. But and that's a sort of interesting point. So anyone who's kind of out there and has some problems or whatever, one key thing that's really important in life, in my opinion, is to have a good network, have friends and family, and keep connected with them. So if you do have some bad times, and you can kind of like reach out for help, and you might be surprised who might help you. Whereas if you don't do those sort of things, you're in a much worse spot. So that's just one little piece of advice for people out there, because I did see a lot of people helping these anarchists that had some problems. So definitely make sure you have a good network out there if you do have some problems. And for all the people out there who do have more money than they necessarily need at the moment, maybe it's just $10 or $20 that they wouldn't even notice if it was gone. Definitely get on the Voluntary Ism In Action page. And is there any other pages other than Facebook, or is that the main one?
We just built a website, launched it, it's published now. You can go to our website as well, viaction.org. You can donate, see some of our case studies through there, a lot of the stuff we accomplished, what we're doing now. Twitter, Instagram, we're still starting slow on those. Facebook's probably the biggest.
Cool, yeah. So we'll have the links to those down below, and get on there. And what I've found also in life, and this is just totally, it's almost like aside from the point, sort of like a spiritual sort of a thing. Every time I've kind of helped someone, not necessarily do they appreciate it, because that's a weird dynamic that happens sometimes, but good things happen to me almost all the time after I've tried to help someone else. I don't know what it is. I don't know how it all works, but if you haven't tried it out there, if you've never donated to anything or anyone, just give it a try and see what happens. It's kind of like this weird dynamic in life that the more that you kind of give, the more that comes to you. I don't know if you feel that way at all. You are a nihilist, so maybe not, but I've definitely noticed that. So
I really like because I'm a hardcore capitalist. I love money. But at the same time, the team's been doing this for free. But I think we have been getting income. It's psychological income. We get pretty competitive on getting this stuff done, and the reward, it's all psychological. But it really feels like this little empty space in your heart. It makes you feel really good. So I think that's how we get paid. And yeah.
That's awesome for all the statists out there. I wish they could watch this video. First of all, anarchists, they're dangerous. They throw bombs. Then we talk about, we're voluntarists as well, if you're scared of the anarchy word. And they're like, how would people give money? It's like, look, that's what we're doing. And that's I think one of the biggest things I've tried to push on this podcast, and we're almost at episode 500 now, is not just talking about this stuff, but getting out there and doing it. And that's what you're doing. And so many of the last recent guests have been doing that. And I think that's a huge, very important thing. I think you're right, Logan, that we can talk all day, but we have to show people as well. And if we're not even talking, we're not walking the walk that we're talking, then why should they even listen to us if all we're doing is blabbering and not even doing anything? So that's awesome that you're doing this.
Yeah.
Cool. So is there anything else you wanted to mention? I could tell you're definitely not a big talker.
No, not really. I guess other than if you feel the need to donate or compelled, man, just go ahead and head over to one of our pages and help some folks out, man. There's always people that need some help.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll definitely have all the links to that down below. On the medical stuff, I just want to mention that so many of these things are actually kind of curable. And there's so many natural ways to do it. And I've been involved in a lot of those. We actually have a whole health and wellness portion of Anarchapulco. So if you're out there and you have some sort of ailment, don't just listen to your doctor. In fact, I wouldn't even listen at all to my doctor. I wouldn't even go to a doctor, actually, at this point because of how I know how the system works. Check out things like the health and wellness part of Anarchapulco. Definitely, like I said, if you got a little bit of extra money and you haven't even donated anything before, give it a try. As Logan said, it kind of gives you this nice feeling. It's almost kind of selfish, right, Logan? I've heard this comment before that even when you give charity, it is in some way selfish. And it kind of, in one way it is, because you usually do kind of feel good afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I guess it is a selfish feeling.
yeah, it is. People call us anarchists selfish, right? We don't care about anyone else. So I guess in one way you could say, yeah, I give to charity, but it's a selfish act, Yeah,
but I think a lot of people need to realize that self-interest makes just about everybody else better off. Because if you're going to act in self-interest, say you want to make some money, the only way you can make someone else happy is only way you can make money is by making other people happy, acting in self-interest. So
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole capitalist side of it all, is where they talk about capitalism and they're, capitalists are bad. They're just selfish and greedy. It's like, no, they're providing products and services to people who want them, and they're getting money back in return.
We're just doing what you're asking us to.
Yeah, exactly. So just like everything, it's all screwed. Like most people just have all the wrong idea about everything. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, share down below. Definitely like and share so we can start to wake more people up, because they're just, in many ways, it's just really sad for them that they don't realize the world could be such a better place. And they're really actually destroying it almost by accident, because they don't understand what's actually real and what's not real. And they think the cops are there to protect them. They think the government's there to help them. And they think us anarchists are dangerous and selfish. And well, you can just judge for yourself on what you think of us, what kind of people we are. But I think we're pretty good, actually. And that's why we actually have Anarchapulco. So I'll just mention Anarchapulco coming up February 13th to 16th. All the top people in anarchy, voluntarism, all that kind of stuff, whole health and wellness stuff. You just check it out. It's we'll put it in the links down below. So I'd like to thank Logan for coming on again, and please try to support them. Even just go to their Facebook page, like and share the page. Make sure people are aware of it. Share this video. Even that can help change the world, and that's what we're trying to do. So that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.
Anarchapulco, it's so hype, I'm trying to tell ya. This the event of the year and best vacation ever. Ron Potter, Jeffrey Tucker, just to name a few. Get your tickets, you don't want to miss it. You should roll through. Talking politics to health and self-improvement to investing. So many things, not one thing. Learn how to live life unchained, yeah. 4 days vibing on the beach, time to connect. All about growth, way more than a conference. This is Anarchapulco, yeah. Let's go.
You ain't seen nothing yet.